So we are live. Welcome to Mental Health Matters. I am here with our special guest today. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second, but we have juicy conversation. We're going to be talking a bit about mental health and like the space where mental health and spirituality integrates. We're going to really have that chat. I know it's something that's been a popular conversation recently, but also my goal is to make sure you guys know as much about mental health from actual mental health providers. Y'all know I love a good meme. Y'all know I like my little social media foolishness and stuff like that. But I want us to be actively informed by all the right spaces. And so we're going to talk a little bit about mental health and just kind of let the conversation flow today. So, Ashley, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us all about you. Tell us, we're going to start off. I want you to make sure to start off with giving people like your Instagram and your Facebook. So then that way they can actually be following you while we're speaking as well.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I am Ashley Reid-Portiez. I am a mental health and substance abuse therapist. I am a spiritual counselor. I am also a behavior consultant and life coach. So I got a lot of hats. Um, I've been in this field for a while, and since the fairy godmother wants me to drop my handles. So you can follow me at Barbie La Bruja 08 on Instagram and IG. And you can also follow my mental health on Facing the Shadows 08 on IG. And on Facebook, you can follow my personal page right here. You just type in my name, Ashley Reid-Portiez. I'll pop up. And then you can also type in Barbie La Bruja LLC and Facing the Shadows LLC on Facebook. So that's how you can find me. I'm easy to find.
Awesome. So we're just going to jump right into this conversation today. I wanted us, and I'm just going to kind of let people know that, oh, there we go. We had a
Yeah,
little,
there we go.
it was like, wait, what is
Yeah,
going
because
on
at
here?
first I was like, okay, well.
No, well, okay, here's our faces. We're here. I was like, wait, why is this not working the way I want it to? So I want us to just kind of start out because this conversation has been a long time coming. We actually have done, like, we've recorded maybe twice, I think, before.
We did twice.
Yeah.
And it was so
Crazy
funny.
things
Like
happen.
the first time we did like a whole hour, and then you were like, "What happened?" And then and then the second time we were like mid recording, and it just went
And it
shroom.
just cut off.
Yes, I was like, maybe the world's not quite ready yet.
Yeah. And you see how we started this and the overlay was on there. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, we got to get on here. So we're not letting anything get in the way of this conversation
Oh,
today.
see,
We're here finally. So
we're
I want
here.
you to
We're
kind of
here.
start out telling people a little bit about your background in mental health, like your training and things like that, because I think that'll be helpful for people just to even understand the point of reference with our conversation today, but also just for people who may be wanting to get into the field to even understand that there are so many different spaces that you can go into in the field.
Okay, so I started out in actually forensic science and psychology. That's what I got my bachelor's in. At first, psychology was minor, and then I had took so many extra psychology classes. They were like, "Girl, you might as well double major." I was like, "Okay." I mean, sure. So double majored in that. Graduated and was right in the world of forensics and more mortician work because I actually When I was 17, I became a mortician apprentice.
Okay.
So I was doing mortuary science, forensic science, and then just one day at work, I was like, get somebody else to do it. And so I was about to get my master's in forensic pathology, and I was just like, and then the lady was like, my advisor, she was like, have you ever heard of forensic psychology? I'm like, yeah, because that's dealing with criminals and assessments. So I went in that, and it was great. Learning about psychosocial law, and then my second semester in grad school, I took a class called victimology,
Okay.
and the professor said everybody in here has been a victim, and she had us, share our stories, and then I shared mine, and then I was just like, yeah, I don't think I want to be a profiler. I want to be a therapist for victims, in the system, and then you went to counseling theories and all that stuff. So that's what I originally was like. Okay, I'm gonna be, uh, advocate in the courts and blah blah blah.
Mm.
And so my very first job in the field was AMI Kids, Pensacola, working with at-risk youth in the DJJ system.
Okay.
And
And
so
DJJ is Department of Juvenile Justice.
mm-hmm.
For people to understand, it's basically the we talk about the juvenile justice system, but it's basically everything that encompasses like the court system and the legal system and things like that for what we term juveniles, which can be different ages in different states. Some states it's anybody under 16, and some states it's borderline around 17. So it just kind of depends on what the laws are in the state where you are.
So I live in Alabama, but I live on the coast, so I can hit different states in like 30 minutes.
Okay.
So that's why I was in Florida. So
and I'm gonna pause you right there, because that's a really good thing to know as well for people about like reciprocity and things like that within the state. Especially if you live in those border type places, like you're not always just stuck working in one specific area. So I think that's good for people to know too, especially if you maybe live in like smaller areas or things like that. Like just make sure that you check and see how that works out where you live, because you may be able to cross state lines and work and things like that too.
Oh yeah, because like I've got people like, you got so much on your, because I was jumping state lines. It was easy, but I started off, it was great. It was amazing. Counseling the at-risk youth, and then they were mental health and ABA, and so because of being there, I got introduced to the world of ABA, applied behavior analysis.
Okay.
So I went back to school for that. And so then that's how I am a behavior analyst. So, and that story is a story for another time. I'm not autism ABA. I worked in it, but I like the other components of behavior. And so when I left that, literally right after I graduated, I was crying because I was like, I can't do autism ABA. And so I end up in substance abuse, because that is a part of mental health and applied behavior analysis. And I was in that for 5 years, and I would tell anybody. And then I left that briefly and went back to at-risk youth, and then went back to substance abuse. That is a whole, I tell anybody, the best, you will learn everything working at a substance abuse facility.
It's a lot. It's so much. Like, I mean, so you kind of have some of the similar background as me, because I went in thinking forensic psychology as well, but I just took an undergrad. I just did all psych classes, and I had an undeclared minor in criminal justice. Okay. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna kind of balance it out that way. And then just kind of, I was like, I don't know if I really wanted to have it as a major. I wanted to kind of leave it open. Psychology was so basic,
Yeah.
and so broad. It didn't really give you anything to zero in on. It's like one of those things. It's like kind of like a building block more than anything. Um, and so I too ended up with at-risk youth. I was actually teaching kindergarten
Okay.
at the time at a private daycare, and then ended up going to a job fair. I don't even remember how I found out about the job fair, but ended up going to a job fair and walking up to a table, and it was Boys Town, and ended up getting a
Oh, I've
job
heard of
in a
Boys
spot.
Town. Yeah.
This was like so this was about like 2000. Well, I graduated in 2000, so like 2001. So I ended up getting this job for Boys Town and working there for about 2 or 3 years. There was one here in Atlanta, and so it was, working with kids from DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, and then also working with kids who were from DFACS, so Family and Children's Services, or maybe they had a dual link. But it was a group home. And from there, I had just had other co-workers who were pursuing higher interests. And at the time, it was like a big thing. It was like, are you going to become professional counselor or social worker? And nobody had really talked to me about, being a social worker, because, the connotation is social worker is like they're going to go in the home and take your kids out of
Mm-hmm.
the home. Like that's all they think you do. And they were like, I had about like 3 coworkers who had gone back to school for professional counseling. So they were pursuing LAPC, LPC, or whatever the credentialing is in your state, because it differs from state to state. Same discipline, just different alphabet soup after your name.
Lots of
um,
acronyms.
it's alphabet soup by the time we get finished with stuff.
Yeah.
And I had one coworker who was like, no, like you should go back for your MSW, because by the time you become clinical, you're the one who can sign the 1013. In Georgia, we call it a 1013. Some places call it a 5150. Some people call it a Baker
Yeah.
Act. It's us signing the involuntary order. And she said, we actually get paid more money than professional counselors, because our signature allows like different companies to stay within commission for their for all of their money and stuff like that. So I was like, so I started researching, ended up in social work. And from working at Boys Town, you kind of, once you get your foot in the door, you hear where other people are working, because just
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, it was like, oh, I kind of worked here and then I worked here. A lot of us work contract work, and we work maybe 2 or 3 different things, doing different things. So there was a period of time where all I did was assessments. I've never gone into anybody's home and deprived the child out of the home. I've only ever done clinical work. So working in the ER for emergency services, doing all diagnostic stuff. So for me, knowing the DSM, um, it's like it runs in my head. So I
Yeah.
know it all the time. Biopsychosocials, and just doing assessments and things like that. And so there's so many different areas that you can go into, and so many different disciplines. I did some mental health, mostly it was mental health, but I did some substance abuse too, because it's when you're dealing with the chronically mentally ill, or like community-based services, you can't avoid substance abuse. Like
Yeah.
it's there. So just I wanted us just to kind of start out with sharing that, because I want people to understand that there's so many different avenues and so many different areas. I had friends who went into like the nonprofit sector, and so they were the ones who maybe helped out the homeless shelters with getting donations.
Mm-hmm.
um there's so many different things you can do, and some of it's behind the desk, some of it is stuff that you do one-on-one with clients. And I think that's important. Like right now, and you talked about it a bit, but what people don't talk about is, and you said it without saying it, but I know what you were doing, like there's a space of burnout where you
Oh.
you get so tired, like you're like, I have worked here in this space for so long, I am tired of looking at this. So then you can easily kind of go to another side because those skills are transferable and be able to work in another aspect. And then so we, a lot of times in this business, we kind of float around, but it helps us to gather new credentialing, new
Mm-hmm.
skills. So like even right now, I'm going back to working as a documentation specialist.
Okay.
So it's something I've done over the years, just kind of on the low, like helping people keep that, because one of the things, and you'll attest to this, is that if we didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Like
Mm-hmm.
documentation is key. We have to document everything, and that documentation keeps you in compliance and keeps your money rolling in. We have to document to bill and things like that. And so I'm kind of burned out on the client work and picked up doing the documentation specialist piece again for companies, just helping them to make sure that their documentation is in order so they pass audits and stuff. So there's so many different things. I wanted us to just kind of start out there talking about like those different avenues so people understand when they go get this degree, you're not like, you don't get into counseling and all you do is sit with a client on the couch and do therapy. Like it's very wide open.
It is. It is. When I say I worked with so many different populations, like I said, I worked with
Yeah.
kids in DJJ system. I worked with intellectually disabled adults. I worked with kids with autism and other developmental or behavior disorders. I worked with babies.
Mm.
I literally did play therapy. And it's so funny because I just thought about I have red lipstick on today. And when I used to, like when whoever the baby I had today, or the little toddler, when they did a good job, I would give them kisses so they would see, the lipstick on their cheek, and the mom's just like, "Oh, you had Miss Ashley today," because
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
so, but the babies, that it brightened them up because they were just like, "Ooh, kiss, 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 kiss."
Yeah.
Um, I worked, like I said, substance abuse with kids, with juveniles, adults. I'm sorry, you might hear my cat in the background. If anybody has cats want all the attention, and
All the time.
so she's upset that I put
It's
her in the
okay.
back.
We like having extra guests. It's okay.
So I put her in the back, but I might let her back out. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, but baby, yeah. The
So
mama cat.
I want us to kind of go into some of the kind of popular things that, like pop culture, because y'all know I'm a pop culture freak about things. I want us to kind of talk about some of those some of the things that float around on the internet that give us misinformation.
Oh,
So, I mean, last year the word was toxic. The year before that, everyone was triggered. I think 10 years ago, everybody was bipolar. Now all of a sudden, people are, there's a high amount, and because you talked about ABA, there's a high amount of people self-diagnosing as autistic, which I
mm-hmm.
find interesting. Like that's the new wave. Self-diagnosing as neurodiverse, and and narcissism has been ongoing for the past few
and
years.
and
So
empath.
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. And I mean, definitely how misinformation is misguiding us, but even just kind of sharing a little bit, like how we go about properly diagnosing, and maybe like even just why us doing this in pop culture I think it's messing up our relationships.
So let's talk about the self-diagnosing for autism. Um, we went to school, in the 90s. Like I was in elementary school in the 90s. So I do know like back then, special need kids, um, they were completely isolated from us.
Yeah.
We didn't see them. Maybe PE, maybe lunch. You just knew they were there. And now they're integrated with the general, which is great. I think it's because I really, when you look back on it, that was mean, that was cruel. Why?
Yeah.
Because they were different. Because quick story, I remember a kid that when I was in elementary school, um he apparently was placed in, when they used to call it special ed, and
Mm-hmm.
his mom was like, he's different but he's not. And so then they did a test, and come to find out that boy was just super smart, so they took him out of there and put him in with us, and he's a freaking neuro surgeon now.
Good.
So yes, um
Mm-hmm.
back then, if you show any different quirk, something wrong with you. Like for me, honestly, they tried to say that I had ADHD,
Yeah.
and they were going to, but the teacher, Miss Inez, she said, "No, ma'am." She was like, "There's nothing wrong with her. She's just smart and bored. Put her in my class."
There we go.
And that's what it was. The teacher that I was in. So now it went from under diagnosing to, oh my god, you like, sugar, extra sugar or Twinkies, you must be autistic.
Right.
And it's
You like order and you organize things, you're autistic. Or
like,
you
right,
don't give eye contact, you're autistic. And it's like, no.
you have to get, certain assessments. Now there are some adults, because the spectrum is wide. Let's get that. It's very, very wide.
Yes.
And there are some adults who probably struggle in school, and now they're getting the appropriate assessment and being like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know what, I did have ADHD back then, or I am on the spectrum. And maybe if I had the appropriate resource back then, I wouldn't have struggled. But
Right.
then you have people now, a certain celebrity who went on a show saying that, oh, I'm autistic, and then everyone's like, well, when did you get enough? Oh, I self-diagnosed. And you have so many people like, no, we have to do assessments, we have to do battery tests, we have to do it's more than
Yeah.
that. And then
I
it's
mean,
it's
and
just
it's the same thing with like, bipolar. Just because you had an intense mood swing doesn't make you bipolar. It's become something that people kind of say jokingly and then it's stuck. Or, I say being an asshole isn't in the DSM. You are dating an asshole. He's not a narcissist. Like,
no.
narcissism is a personality disorder. And to be quite honest, a lot of the things that people think are narcissistic are actually borderline personality disorder. But so I mean, we have, I think the self-diagnosing creates awareness, but I don't think it's something that you should just say, oh, I self-diagnosed this. It's not like saying, you know what, I know I got a sinus infection and I didn't go in for it because I get sinus infections all the time, every year, same time every year. So I just deal with it. The mental health doesn't work like that, where you can just like grab a few things and then say, or yeah, I had a cousin that dealt with this, so that means it's me. It's totally not the way it works. It's not how we do diagnostic stuff at all. We have to look at the
Right.
whole scope.
Because
How long have you been dealing with these things? What's
yeah.
the frequency? What's the intensity? There's so many things that go into play with that.
And another thing too, genetics play a part.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time, autism is genetic, and you
Yeah.
will be surprised. But this also goes, same thing with schizophrenia. It is being schizophrenic. It is genetic.
Yes.
However, just because you have an aunt who diagnosed on medication, been treated for years, and you're having a moment where you're sad, it doesn't mean you're schizophrenic. It means
No.
you're just sad, and that's the thing that's crazy, because then when you get people who self-diagnose, then they try to weaponize it. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, I don't get what you're saying because I'm autistic. No, you
No.
you understand fully what the person is trying to tell you. You're choosing not to. You're choosing to be a jerk about it, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
choosing to weaponize that I'm autistic. Now, could you be? Very possible. But
Very
have
much.
but like I said, autism is so broad, and that's another thing too, where it doesn't just look one way. But then the caveat to that is you got people who like, well, where we be like, oh, they're quirky, they're eccentric, and now it's like, oh, I got autism, which is very
No.
funny. My oldest son, he is very reserved when he first meet people. He's not um a social butterfly at first. He's very
Mm-hmm.
sociable, and he will talk your ear off, but he has to get comfortable with you. He have to assess the situation.
Which is great boundaries.
Great. That's just how he always been. But then and he's shy. So until he gets to know you, then you will sit here and be looking like, well, he's a Gemini. So,
Like, who's this kid? Who was
yeah,
that?
he's
What
a
happened?
real Gemini. He is a Gemini. And so it was very funny. We went to register when he's a junior now. And I had I can't remember the exact question that I asked to register. And and then she gave me the answer, and I was like, "You okay with that?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah." And so then we're about to walk out. She said, "Excuse me," and I was like, "Yes, ma'am. Um, is he, on the spectrum?" No, he's just shy, and it's high school, and he's scared. It's a new environment because he's shy.
Normal anxiety about something new. And we've coached stranger danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
Right.
So the moment that a child actually is using boundaries now, today's age is like, oh, autistic, and even the same thing with ADHD. ADHD was overly diagnosed for Black
Mm-hmm.
males,
Mm-hmm.
brown males, Black males, anybody who had extra energy. And it's like, no, but there's different kinds of learning. If they're more of like a kinetic learner or an applied learner, and they have to get up and move around and use their hands and use their body to learn, then all of a sudden it was, well, because you don't sit still for 8 hours and let someone lecture to you, then something's wrong with you. Well, the reality is, when you are sitting in your meeting at work, you checked out within 10 minutes. Like, it wasn't even 5 minutes. You checked out. So you're not ADHD. You're not focused. You're not in that flow. You're thinking of all these other things. And I mean, that's actually quite normal for the human mind. We're not designed to sit for just hours and let someone lecture. I mean, the other point of that, I mean, because I have two kids who are both on the spectrum, and I mean, they look completely different. They present completely different. But my oldest is he did his psychological and educational testing. He is 98% visual.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are just lecturing and just talking, he didn't hear you, right? And so I can call him from the next room and say, "Hey, I need you to go do blah blah blah." He does not hear me. He just doesn't. He doesn't, and it's not that he's hard of hearing. He just does not process information audio. Now, I show it to him, or I show up and I stand there and I look, and then he's like, "Oh, okay." Then he's present, right? So photographic memory. He can read something one time and there we are,
Yeah.
like, I mean, he remembers stuff and he has memories, and I'm thinking, you were like one when that happened. Like, because I'm adding it up and I'm like, hold up, like, and it's vivid, and he recounts it. And so we're in this DIY. I mean, because this DIY is cute, like when you remodel in a room and
Yeah, right.
you know what I mean, or you're doing something with your wardrobe and stuff like that. But when it comes to, I mean, and I always feel like mental health gets, like, people are more willing to do that with mental health because it's so highly disrespected. Like, you wouldn't DIY stuff for your heart health.
No,
You really wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I mean, there's people who don't go to the doctor, but you really wouldn't DIY for heart health. You wouldn't DIY for things like that. But with mental health, there's such stigma. There's such and we're gonna get into like the integrative part of that as well. Because even I say everybody has intuition, everybody has discernment. Some of us spend more time more highly attuned, and some people just don't. Programming, nature versus nurture, that kind of thing. But a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to come to therapy because you're going to get all in my head, or it's that idea that of being seen, or I think having to actually produce some type of change. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, you're there, and we're going to point out that there's these things that are happening. So even just working with clients spiritually, and people coming, and they'll sit down with me, and then they'll be amazed at how much, like, how perceptive I am with things, and how much I see. And I'm like, did you pay attention when you booked, or like
Right.
what were you expecting? And
A
I
lot
I
of
mean,
them,
you have to be
I
vulnerable.
I say that spiritually wise, and therapy wise. Now, at first when I got in the field, like it was more like I didn't tell people, but people just kind of picked up on it, just knew. They just and then
Mhm.
so by the time that I got to the clinic, the substance abuse clinic, I didn't hide it. Spirituality won't come in here, you will sit here, vibe out, you can't. So I have found not just a lot of times they want you to pretty much tell them that they're right in their wrongness, especially with
Lots of co-signing.
spiritual clientele, and even with mental health clientele who kind of know that you're spiritual. I found that, and then they will get upset because you read them literally, because you can see, like I said, I am an empath, I am a seer, I am a
Mhm.
conjurer. I there are things that I can see with anybody. I keep my matter of fact. I thank you. You taught me how to ground properly. I learned that from
Yeah,
you.
because that's
Really?
a huge thing. If you don't,
Yes.
because sometimes you could just, everything just feels haywire, and you're like, no, I got to figure out how to ground that so I can
Yeah.
use it properly.
You
And it's
taught me.
constant. It's
Yes,
a
you did.
constant thing. It's not like you ground one time. It's like, no, you out here in and of
Mhm.
this world with all these folks, a lot of people, and that's one thing that I don't feel like I had when I was working
Mhm.
one-on-one in mental health with clients, was coming home and releasing the peopling for the day.
Yes.
With mental health, we have debriefing, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time when you work somewhere, there is a space of debriefing, whether it's professionally designed, or you end up doing it, if you work shift work, you end up doing it with your coworkers. um and I will say that in mental health, a lot of us, like, we really depend on our colleagues. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
We
so
do.
debriefing is a thing. And then there's also we have like integrated sessions where we have to do like behavioral plans and things like that and go over stuff like that with the clients. And so that's a time of like supervision that ends up kind of being built into the job. So we have these kind of built-in spaces where you can talk about things or work through things, and it helps you to release, but it's also you releasing, client work and not holding on to it, because sometimes it's hard not to take that stuff home.
Oh yeah.
It gets very hard not to take it home when you get invested, because you're human, right? So yeah, that grounding piece. I mean, I know now, hindsight, but I wish I knew, at that point. It's like, oh, you've seen X amount of people for the day. You gotta let that go. Instead, it was me riding home, with a playlist, stopping to get a coffee. That stuff helps, but I wasn't aware of how to really, really ground my energy so I wouldn't feel frazzled.
Well, I will tell you, I would never forget it. This is when I was working with intellectually disabled adults, and that place was a toxic place. And
Mm.
you posted um that morning. It was so funny, and I just so happened to just get in the group. I was like, oh, okay. So I sat there in my office, and I envisioned myself surrounded by white and purple light, and I was like,
Oh,
oh,
the white
this
light
is
one.
the
Yeah.
yeah, the white and purple light. And I did it, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then you were like, go outside and let the wind take it away. I was outside the
That
parking
was
lot
the I
like
think
this
that was the blowing
wind.
roses. That was the blowing roses one. I think that's
Yes.
because it's the white light. And so she's talking about and so this is so synchronized, because I forgot about that meditation, and I just came across it like 2 or 3 days ago, and I was like, oh, I need to repost this. Like I completely forgot
That was in
about it, and I was like, this one is so
2017.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that 27. I kid you not. And then you were like, also go outside
Yeah.
and just ask the wind to take. I'm literally standing in the parking lot like this, like, wind,
Mm-hmm.
take it away. And everybody's looking at me. And I was just like, baby, I needed it. So
Oh my gosh, that's so yeah.
I started teaching like the baby therapists that um at the clinic, like the little ones will come
Mm,
in. I call, you know how we call the baby, the baby therapist. So I was just like,
yeah.
and they're crying in tears, and I'm just like, come on, let's ground, let's go outside, and and to the point that I became kind of like the mama hen. Every time it was a new therapist there, I'm like, come on, let's sit here, like hold a
Oh,
crystal. So like we need that because
I'm
it's
gonna
a
bring that
lot.
one back up. I'm gonna bring that one
Please
back up.
do.
I completely forgot about it, and I don't know what I was looking at, and I was like, oh my gosh, this was like the best meditation, and I don't know how, like, I just forgot about it. So I'm gonna bring it back up, because I'm gonna put it on healing through sacred writing, because it was such a good meditation. Yeah.
Right. It's probably one of the reasons I'm still a therapist today. Because that day, I literally was about to take my pen, these keys, and be like, y'all got it. I cannot. And I saw it. And I
Because
was
so we're dealing with, when we're talking about that burnout, right? To go back to
like,
even kind of talking about that burnout, we're dealing with um we're dealing with red tape and lots of things where our hands are tied with certain things that we can and can't give with therapy, and um that makes it difficult. It makes things really, really difficult to because it's like, oh, I know this client needs this, but I can't give it because I can't bill for it. So we've kind of got red tape and got our hands bound there. And then there's that portion where, like, I mean, there is never a dull moment in the work that we do.
mm-mm.
There's never a dull moment. And I tell people all the time, like, I'm never surprised by anything that happens with humans, because I've seen so much.
So
And you
much.
see, it's like you never know what's gonna happen at work that day or whatever. So I'm never really surprised by how how things work out. So I mean, it always kept us on our toes. Um,
Right.
so I want you to kind of, just for fun, give us three, just the most random facts about yourself.
Okay. Well, I love kitty cats, as you can tell, because I was fussing about my cat. Um, I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and so I'm an Afro Latina girl, but grew up in the South. So I have Southern culture and Afro Latino culture. But surprisingly, my favorite food is Chinese. I love Chinese food, baby. Chinese food, baby. Comfort food. If I'm stressed, if I'm tired, if I move into a new location, I have
It's the
my first
noodles.
night. My first night in any new home, I have to have Chinese food. That is something that my mom did, and it is. I did it one time. I one time I didn't do it. I didn't end up in that. I didn't stay in that place long. So in
It's
my
like we
mind,
gotta have a Chinese. We gotta have a
the
Chinese.
first night I have to have Chinese food in any new home, and then I'm a summer baby, but I love fall. Give me the sweatshirts, the
I know. Give
stars,
me the boots. I'm ready for the boots. I'm ready. I
pumpkin
was just
spice
telling the kids the other
latte,
day, I want to make the candied apples. Like, I need to start keeping my eye
right?
out for the candy apple
Pumpkin,
kit. Hmm.
hayrides. I'm ready for
I
it.
like the
Like,
color scheme.
right.
All of
Like you
it.
look at all plants, it's just like it's funny how they sit here and say like pumpkin spice season. Like, baby, I'm the one that's screaming at
It's so comfy.
you. It's me.
So I want you to tell us just some trends in mental health, and we're just going to incorporate like mental health, substance abuse, personal development, some trends in those areas that you like, and trends that you would love to see changed.
You know what's recent? Okay, so we talked about self-diagnosing, okay, but I hate how people say that if you go get counseling, it makes you weak. I
Mm,
I hate that idea because you don't feel weak if you go to the doctor for diabetes. So why do you feel weak going to a therapist if you are noticing that you've been crying 5 days out of the week for no reason?
yeah.
Um, Another thing that recently have made the wave lately is shadow work.
Oh, this is true. Yeah, come on.
And
Come on.
I
It's
and
back. It's back. It's back as the
so
wave.
shadow
Yeah.
work is part psychology, part spiritual. And I love
Mhm.
it. I do shadow work. I teach shadow work. I have workshops on it. But what I don't like is like, oh, let me just get this shadow work journal off TikTok and I'm straight. No, you're not. It's so much
More of the
more.
DIY. More of
It's
the
so much
DIY.
more than just this cute little journal with a mirror on. I mean, no shade, no tea, no shade, no lemonade. I mean, great, but
The journals
because
are cute.
when you really get down into shadow, like I told people, I was just like, when you do shadow work with me, you're gonna cuss me out, and that's okay. I love you. It's way, 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 way more than just writing in a cute little mirror journal.
Yeah.
Another thing too, um, I guess my cat's co-signing if you can hear.
That's like,
Um,
yeah.
Another thing too, people are becoming more. There are more people who are, starting to integrate self-care, but they still are afraid of mental health.
Mm.
It's more like, oh, I'll go meditate for my mental health. I'll go, walking for him. And that helps. But like if you're still sitting here raging around, come talk about it. Can do to help you. Uh yeah, that's
No,
really
those
over the
are really
top in
good
my
ones. Those are really good ones because it goes back to that DIY. It's like everybody wants to do it themselves. And the reality is, if you were that self aware on all of these issues, you wouldn't be displaying those issues. And so it's not that the therapist is like in this hierarchy and they know more than you and they're going to propel you along or anything like that. It's more like in our human experience, we all need a mirror at some point in
Mm-hmm.
time. We need somebody to just be like, did you realize you did that? Like, because we all have stuff in this human experience. And so, yeah, I mean, like, because I'm about to publish what last year I published two journals, the Moon Jewels workbook and the Gratitude Journal. And then this year I'm working on the formatting for the Dream Journal. So I like publishing journals because I like creating journals that people can use to like brain dump and stuff like that. But you have to have somebody to work through that with. And that's what your therapist is for. They're not there, like you said, because you're weak or there's something. I mean, we all encounter things and stress and pivots and you need some advisement, some support, some empowerment on how to. I was going to say just let her in the camera. We need some empowerment and some support and guidance on how to navigate through all of those things. So this is why I want to have these conversations
Okay.
with other mental health professionals so we can start to normalize what seeking mental health therapy is like, why we would seek it, and just kind of what it looks like. And I want us on camera so people can see it's like, oh, she looks like me or he looks like me. And like you
Right.
said, Latina background. Just like, put me back in the camera. He was like, I did not ask to be put down. What are you doing? But no, the Afro Latina background and stuff like that, like so other people know, because that's one of the things that always is something that clients say. They're like, oh, I came because you look like me. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
girls, that's what we do when we want to see a GYN or we want to get our hair done and stuff. We want people that look like us or who are a reflection of us. So I definitely, with mental health matters, I want people to understand that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, psychology was, old crotchety white men. um,
Mm-hmm.
so much of the patriarchy was, propelled by white men and taken over by white men. And we are just here to let people know that there are women in these circles and there are Black and brown women and there are people of different ethnicities, so we can be culturally sensitive and really empathetic to what it is that you're going through. So I thank you for coming on with me today. We chat about stuff like all the time otherwise, but I wanted us to make sure we had something that was kind of structured that we can share with people, just so they have the understanding, and just getting us some more education out here, because mental
Right.
health, we definitely need these initiatives so people feel like this is normal. And I want us to be proactive with mental health versus reactive. Reactive
Right.
is usually how people are. It's like, oh, this, my life is falling apart, I have to seek mental health therapy. No, I want you guys to start to have the resources and the tools ahead of time, so by the time you get there, you're more comfortable.
Right. That's what we really, really need. But thank you
Hmm.
for having me on here.
Thank you so much. I want you to share your information again. It's going to be posted, because I'm posting the live chat. It's going to be on my YouTube But it'll also be on Healing Through Sacred Writing, the link for this chat, so you guys can go back and listen anytime. Her print interview is also going to be on Healing Through Sacred Writing, but I want you to give me like your Instagram and all your handles and everything like that again for everybody.
Okay, so regular Facebook, if you want to follow my personal page, is Ashley Reid-Portiez. You can type in my name, you see my pretty face. You can also find me on Facebook, Barbie La Bruja LLC and Facing the Shadows LLC. On TikTok, I am Barbie La Bruja 08. On IG, I am Barbie La Bruja 08 and Facing the Shadows 08. And you can find me.
Thank you, Ashley, so much for coming on and joining me today. This is honestly first episode in this format of Mental Health Matters. So you broke us in. Thank you.
Yay! Well, I'm happy
Thank
for
you,
that.
guys. Thank you for kind of working through this with me. I wanted to try something different for everybody. I've had coconut oil, stardust, and dope vibes for so long as the
Oh,
audio podcast, but I wanted to kind of give people a little something different. So we're on here live streaming. It will be on my YouTube page, Love and Fairy Magic, Faery, and look out for us on Healing Through Sacred Writing, which is on Substack. So it's Healing Through Sacred Writing.substack.com. So thank you guys for joining us today.
bye.